Welcome everybody to the Women's Summit. This is our first Women's Summit, women business owners teaching what we know to other women business owners, all women speakers for all women business owners, because we are different. Today we have the amazing Anke Hermann with us, or Hermann with us, and she's going to tell us all about what she does and how what she does is impacted in what she does with customers as she's building and growing her business to help you to learn and grow and build your business with respect to customer handling as well. So welcome to the summit, Anke. It is so amazing to have you. You're in Spain, so that's exciting too, because it's, halfway across the world for me. I'm in Wisconsin. So it's just fun and amazing to be able to meet and talk to and bring the knowledge and expertise of women from all around the world together with other women around the world. So could you just introduce yourself and tell us exactly what you do and how long you've been doing it and why you do it, so we have just a little bit of background from you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. It's so much fun to be here, and it really is close to my heart to help other women make a living doing something they're really passionate about. And yeah, I'm based in the south of Spain. I ended up here after going on a holiday. I came on a holiday and I walked through the historic part of town in lovely Granada in the south of Spain. And it really felt as if, how time stands still and life was simple. And there was just something about it where I thought, I could just live in I would love to live in one of those white little houses and with the cobblestone streets. And there was that idea. And then it was like, okay, so how could I make it happen? And the question was how. It wasn't really whether I would have a go at it, because having grown up back in East Germany and sort of behind the wall, and where you're not allowed out and where you couldn't do what you wanted to do, there was always that sense of being like caged in, and we were like literally. And so I think that left me with that sense of I need to break out, and I have to make the most out of that precious gift that we've been given. And so I've always been this kind of trailblazer, and I'd rather go out and throw myself into some sort of crazy adventure. And I always find the risk there, or the fear of, it not working out is a lot less than the fear of the regret not having tried and just sort of shrinking back into some default future. And so I've really felt passionate about that, and the whole move to Spain. And with that, the question, okay, so what would I do for a living if I were to pack up and move to Spain? Oh, actually, I would love to have my own sewing studio. And to actually go ahead and do that was really, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't work out, but then at least I know. And I'm not going to look back 10 years time, wondering what life in Spain would have been like. And so I just basically just threw myself into that adventure. And really with a little bit of arrogance.
Confidence, not arrogance.
Naivety, that kind of, I've always done really well in corporate jobs. How hard can it be to sell some skirts, right? so I really, honestly, I didn't really, I didn't think it was going to be that hard. And, well, I did expect some challenges, but what really almost knocked me down wasn't what I expected, because I went in and thought, oh, I want to make flamenco dresses. And I knew nothing about flamenco. and I knew how to sew, but I didn't know anything about flamenco dresses. But, I didn't want it too easy. And so I thought, I wasn't sure whether Spanish flamenco dancers would ever consider ordering their dance costume from some like German crazy would-be dressmaker, because I'd never studied that in any formal way. And so that was really the concern, and whether I would be able to get enough orders to make a living doing that. So that was really the questions that I had and the doubts that I had, and whether I was good enough a dressmaker to keep my clients happy. But what happened was that before I knew it, I had more work than I can handle, and I found my Spanish clients were, well, what felt to me like super demanding and very pushy when it came to asking for what they wanted. And I'd grown up, well, to be blunt, to be a people pleaser, right? I always felt, and I thought my job as a service provider is to make sure my clients are happy. And so when they wanted something, I would go out of my way to make sure they get that. And so there was this, and then there was this sense it was like never enough. You do one thing and then they'd want something more. And then you'd work for one client and somebody else would kind of keep pushing. And I kind of felt like torn apart, worn out, and it really got me to the point of, well, pretty much burnout. And so I was at the point that I thought, oh God, so if that's what living your dream is, I really want nothing to do with it. I'd rather get a job. And to be honest, I did look, but fortunately, in hindsight, it was in the middle of economic crisis in Spain, so there was just no way that I could get a job. So there was really that, okay, there's only one way out, and that's through. And that's when I think the moment when I thought, God, I hate my clients, like kind of all of them, it was like, well, hang on a second. That's not true. There's some people I really love working with. What is it about them? And then so I started asking different questions. And I had a few insights that really turned the whole thing around. Because the whole problem I found was I didn't know how to say no. And the reason it was so difficult was because I thought if I say no, and everything I did had grown via word of mouth. And so I thought, well, if somebody wants something and I tell them, no, I won't do that, then she'll be upset. And then she'll go and talk to everybody else about it. So it was, first thing, she won't come back and order anything. And then she's going to tell all her friends about it. And then they won't come and order either. And before I know it, I'm on the street homeless, basically. And so when it actually came, when I was at the point where I really felt with my nose in the dirt and so I just really can't bend any further. And if this means that everybody's staying away, then so be it. And I started to say no. And the first time it was really like somebody would go, oh, can you bring that dress up to the theater on Sunday night? And I'm like, no, sorry, can't do that. And she goes, okay. And I'm like, what? Hang on. And so, and I did that a few times and quickly realized that the whole chain of horrible consequences that I'd been fearing all these years was just a load of made up crap, basically. And that's when everything turned around for me, and clients could feel it. And really, like shortly after, I'd work with the same clients, but the experience was entirely different. And it turned the whole thing around. And that's when I knew, so I can't be the only one struggling. My thing might have been the people pleaser thing. Somebody else, my partner, he's going to kill me if he finds out. I tell you about this. He would struggle charging because he has, at some underneath layer of his way of seeing the world, I'd rather be a good person than have a lot of money, and that kind of like that would really get in the way of him being successful with his business. So if everybody has their own thing, I always say, like, we don't have business problems, we have personal issues that show up in our business, and it shows time and time again. And so I really knew instantly that I wanted to spend my energy and my time focusing on helping other people who have the courage and who have the urge to do something more with their lives and to kind of live what they're passionate about. But then we're not brought up for that, you know, and so I really, that's when I knew, you know, that's where I wanted to go. And so yeah, then I went back to school, trained as a coach, and that's the mission now, to help other women who are really passionate about what they do, but this whole business building thing is just a struggle. And the technical work I've done, this analytical, you know, rational, methodical mind of mine, that helps working out the tech and working out all the different steps involved in a project and breaking it down so far that the next logical step is obvious. And the creative mind helps, and being a coach, like those three elements together is what I now use to help other women bring their dreams to life. And that's what brought me here as well.
That's awesome. I love what you said about we all have something. We all have some limiting belief or something that's holding us back, but we don't know we have it because we just think it's our beliefs. We don't know that it's a limiting belief. Mine, and I have kind of a similar story to yours. Mine a while back was I never would ask for help. I always figured, and I know it's like you said, your partner's is not charging enough. Well, that's about 90% of the population has that same dilemma or that same belief. But we all feel like we're the only one with it. And mine, somehow along the years, I have 4 sisters, and whatever happened when I was a kid, but I came up with the idea that I should be able to figure everything out myself and I shouldn't ask for help. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago, which is really pathetic that it took me that long because I'm old, to realize that I was making my life 1,000 times harder than if I would just ask the right questions and asking the right questions is another way of asking for help, because I'm asking that I get help from, you know, something outside of me to find an answer. And so what was the difference between asking a person for help and just asking the question and asking myself for help? So I love what you say about our answer is through our biggest challenge. And the secret I recently discovered is that the people I work with, because I coach business owners as well, it's always us. We are always the bottleneck to our business being what it is we want it to be. And it's hard for our egos to accept that. But once we get that, we understand, oh my God, if I'm the bottleneck, I have 100% of the control and 100% ability to fix that situation. And then my business can be whatever I want it to be. And that, but yeah, more people I work with, the more I realize, okay, let's just keep digging until we find out what your thing is, because once we bust through that, the floodgates open and you can do and create whatever you want. So bringing this around to our topic, all about customers, and I love the discussion about how you hated your customers, because so many of us, when we begin our entrepreneurial journey, we think we want to work with one type of people. And as we start working with them, we realize they're not the type of people we want to work with. But I also think that we work with them, the ones that we shouldn't work with, because they show us what it is we need to know about ourselves so that we can pick the right people to work with. Have you found that to be true in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you just said really hits home for me, because I sometimes think the whole inspiration to even come to Spain, sometimes I thought actually that was the lesson I had to learn, because I never had a problem with the people-pleasing thing. When I lived in Germany, when I lived in Australia, when I lived in the UK, they're all cultures where people are quite considerate, you know, where nobody will ask for something that's kind of not reasonable, and especially not ask for it in a pushy way. So, you know, if somebody asks for it, but they kind of, even in the question, there's already the way out. Whereas in Spain, the culture is different. They ask for what they want, and they basically don't ask it. They
demand it.
Demand it.
They demand it.
Yeah, and then if you don't know, if you're weak at, like, if you don't know how to say no, if that's really awkward for you, like they really have a go at you. And I've even heard people, you know, when there were clients and they'd say, yeah, you just put a bit of pressure on so you get it earlier. You know, I overheard that once. I can't believe it, you know. And they just say that with a bit of a giggle while they have a coffee. And they didn't have an idea that something like this would mean that I would work through the night to just not to disappoint a customer. And they didn't it's just a different way of going about things. It's the very forward, like, I want this, and if I can get it out of someone, then great. But on the other hand, I learned that they can take a no as well, and I didn't know that bit, you know, until I actually tried it. So I think that was the bit that I needed to learn. And I couldn't learn it in an environment where everybody is really considerate and would not ask stuff of me that required me to stand in my own power and strength and say, well, and I can say it in the nicest possible way, because I struggled with that a lot. So I don't want to be like a tough bitch, you know. Mm-hmm. I want to be nice and considerate. And all of a sudden I saw, actually, the nicest and the kindest thing I can do for somebody is to say no when I can't take on the work.
I think the nicest and kindest thing you have to do is remember, and we all, I think, and this is kind of a gender thing as well, at least in America, I think that as women, we take on way more than we can possibly handle. I mean, I actually took on so much that in 2010, I had a sudden cardiac arrest and died, because I took on so much stress and so much pressure and so much nonsense and so much emotional baggage. And I always could say no. I'm one of those people that I learned at an early age, I automatically say no to everything. And then like 2 minutes later, I buy myself some time to think about it. And then I'll say, well, yes, to the things I agree to. But setting boundaries like that wasn't a problem for me. But asking for help and doing everything myself, that was my, you know, boundary that I needed to learn that lesson. And so I just think it's just such a powerful thing to know that we're going to get tested. We're going to get pushed to whatever our own personal limit is. And it's going to be different for each of us. And hopefully you don't have to learn it in a really difficult way, but health challenges seem to be a really common way that we experience our own limitations.
Sure.
And I forgot my point of that whole diatribe, but I had a point when I started talking. Sometimes I do that. I start talking like, what was my point? What was I talking about? I think that
it'll be back in a second.
Men and women, the difference between men and women and being assertive and pushy. I found that in corporate America. I was always the bitch because I did stand up for what I thought was right and believe in. Whereas, you know, my male counterparts, that was just expected from them. But then when I did it, it was looked upon negatively. And I do think that there's a lot of that, at least in America, in our culture, the difference between men and women in business. And that's part of why the Women's Summit came about, because we do put so much on ourselves. We do expect ourselves to be perfect. We do have to wear 20 different hats, especially when we're running our own businesses. Anyway.
Yeah, true. No, very true. And I think that's part of the reasons that my focus really is on women as well, because you see it. And I used to work as a software developer, and that was like, I was the only woman in the office.
Oh, yeah.
And I really hesitated to even go in there because I thought, oh God, you know, I have to be twice as good too. And I must admit, like, the programmer guys just weren't like that. I never had any, like, they were really lovely, and they never made me feel in any moment that I had to prove anything. But I learned a lot from them, because there was a lot of, and somebody recently, I mentioned some sort of experiment where they basically took a group of men and women and they said, well, okay, there's this job offer, right? Like, you know, an experiment kind of job offer where you have about 70% of the qualifications required and the experience required. Do you apply? And all the guys' hands went up, and only like 4 women. because they thought, oh, well, but I don't have the other 30%, you know, and the guys don't have that problem. They know that they only know half the stuff, but they go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are so brought up to be perfect and to look after everybody else and all of that we tend to question our own abilities. And I think it's really important that we support each other to step out like powerfully.
Mm-hmm. And to highlight one another's strengths, because I think the difference, like you just mentioned, between men and women is women will judge them. We judge ourselves much more harshly than men judge themselves. I think they've done studies on that too. The infamous they, but there have been studies done on that similar to the one you just mentioned, where women totally judge themselves as in a harsher way than men do as a whole. I'm sure some men, there's always crossover. Some men probably do it too. I have a lot of, I think, masculine characteristics and things that, I mean, sometimes I think I should have been born a guy because I am harsh and in your face, right? And I hate shopping and things like that. But,
Me too.
I can't believe how many entrepreneurs actually dislike shopping, how many female entrepreneurs. And I thought I was like the only person on the planet. So at least my daughter thought I was the only woman that hates shopping. And I've got 3 sisters who love shopping. So it all balances out. But I think that as women, we're way harder on ourselves, and we're way more capable than we ever give ourselves credit for. And I don't know why we sometimes think we always figure it out. I laugh because whenever I have a technical problem, because I tend to get frustrated and swear about technology and issues like online, because I'm an engineer by training, but I've been a manager my whole life. I never really worked as an engineer, but a few times. And so I understand the technical things, but when it comes to applying them online and on the computer, I get really frustrated by stuff that it doesn't work. And so I think we're so hard on ourselves, but then I always figure it out. I always find an answer. I always find a solution. So I don't know why we don't adopt that belief in ourselves. So we always figure it out. We always take care of our kids. We always take care of our significant others. We always get the bills paid. We always get the laundry done. We always get the meals made. And we always pretty much survive and live to see another day. So I don't know why we don't give ourselves more credit in knowing that we can do whatever we set our minds to. Whereas guys will be like, yeah, I did something like this 20 years ago. I'm sure I can do this. Sign me up.
That's really was something that I learned in that IT environment. That actually, there's nothing wrong with being confident in your own ability. And another thing that I found really, really helpful, a realization that was really helpful for turning this whole relationship with my clients around, was the moment I realized it wasn't personal. And I think it's such an easy trap to fall into when it's your own business, especially when you provide a service and it's, or you make something with your hands, like it's super personal. Or if you write a text, you write something and then somebody tears it down, to not take that personally. It's an easy trap to fall into. And I remember the moment it dawned on me that, again, it was something where I'd made my life a lot more difficult than it needed to be. When I was in the middle of the turmoil of this, like, I can't do this anymore, I would have like rants. I would be complaining and there'd be this, they just out there to make my life miserable. No, they're not even thinking that far. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. Not in the sense I thought about it, but actually the truth is everybody just looks at life and what they do because it makes sense to them. And they live in their own world with their own worries, with their own whatever. And nobody gets up in the morning to make the dressmaker's life miserable.
Nobody I know.
I know, and that was such a liberation to realize, actually, when they don't show up for an appointment, that doesn't, I can take that to mean that they don't value my work and they don't respect me as a person, and I can go that route and feel miserable for the rest of the day. But then I can think, well, you know, and I've had things like that happen where it turns out, no, she was in hospital with her dad. Mm-hmm. Right? And sometimes she'd forgotten about it because she had, you know, some drama with the kid going on, or whatever else. You know, everybody lives in their own life. And even if they do something to you, or I've had moments where, you know, there were groups of little dancer kids and the mothers would get all upset because, you know, and then you find out she's in the middle of a divorce. And even if she yells at me, and I think it's entirely unreasonable, and you're not right at all. But then when you think, like, even that has nothing, even if she literally yells at me, it has nothing to do with me. It's her struggling with the divorce and who gets the custody of the kid. That's on her mind. And to realize that even if they say something or do something that may not be, you know, the proper thing to do, it's actually not personal. It's got nothing to do with me. They just do what makes sense to them and what they can see in the moment. And like, I'm kind of out of it. And that takes a lot of the pressure off as well. And it makes room for compassion. And clients can feel that too.
I think they absolutely can. I think that we so often think that more of the world revolves, and our world does revolve around us, but what other people do, we have no control over except how we're going to react to it. And I remember mine was, painful confession, I used to get kind of road rage because I used to drive in traffic a lot. And for some reason, I would get road rage and I would think that people were out to cut you off or get you or something. And then one day I just was driving and I realized nobody gets up in the morning and decides they're going to be a jerk on the road to other people. I mean, it's because they're running late or something's going on, or maybe they're running to the hospital to see their dad or their child or whatever, or maybe they're late for a meeting, or maybe their boss sent them somewhere to get something. Who knows? But it's never about me. And that got me over the whole, I realized how ridiculous it was to have road rage, because people don't even know they're messing with you, because I'm letting them mess with me when they don't even know that they're doing it. I don't know if I said that right, but that was my big aha moment about what people do and say almost never has anything to do with me. It's how I learned to deal with bullies and haters and people that were mean at work. It was never about me or my performance. It was always about what was going on in their life and with them. And as soon as you make that little change of perspective, number one, it makes you treat people, like you said, with more compassion and understanding, and people can sense and feel that. And then I think it gives you this confidence and this belief in yourself that you know that you get to choose how you're going to react to everything. So I got the funniest hater the other day on one of my videos. And, you know, a couple of years ago, I probably would have felt bad. I don't think I would have cried over it, but I would have thought he was just a total jerk. And how could he be so mean? And I actually laughed out loud because it was the most ridiculous. It was the most ridiculous hater message I'd ever heard. And I'm like, how long did this person take to actually come up with this hate message that they sent to me? They had to go listen to and watch some of my videos to come up with the stuff that they said in it. And I'm like, how sad for them that they actually had the time and energy to go put in that. And I just, it still cracks me up to this day. But it takes a while till you get there. It takes dealing with people and looking at yourself and realizing that it has nothing to do with you. And that's so powerful. Like you said, your clients do sense it. They do know, and they sense the shift in you, and they're still the same. Like you said, they're the same exact people, but they don't get to you anymore because you know it's not about you. And you're like, oh, I can serve you really well. This is what I'll do for you, but this is all I'll do for you. This is my scope of work. And you know, if you want something beyond that, we can talk about it, but I might say no, because it might not fit with what I'm willing to do and what I'm willing to provide. But it's always about them. And yeah. That's amazing. That's such a great way of looking at it. It's like, if I remember that you're just living in your own little life and creating your own little world, and I'm creating my own little world, I think it's why people can see the same exact event and have totally different versions of what happened. It's amazing.
Happens all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And even with the road rage,
Yep.
I would swear there'll be days when somebody cuts you off and you'll be like, and other days, oh, for God's sake, like depending on your own state of mind as well. What's going on for you in that moment? If you like totally relax and you're just having a good giggle with a friend or whatever, and somebody cuts you off, and you're, oh, for God's sake, you'd like, it's almost impossible to get upset. And other days when you're a bit tense, exact same, and other people function like that as well. So,
road rage was 100% about me and what was going on in my life. When I was busy and stressed out and going crazy and running through my life, I was open to having road rage. Now, I was also attracting more of that negativity to feed the negativity I was already feeling. So people were more apt to cut me off, right? But if I'm in a good mood and I'm just going about my life, so is everybody else that's around me. So yeah, we get what we expect. We get what we create. As hard as that is to admit, we sure and certainly do. So what is your favorite way now to bring customers to you? How do you get customers for your coaching business now?
Through connections. Funny that, isn't it?
I think it's all about relationships, but yeah.
I think it's the only way, I'd say, especially for the coaching, because it's so personal. Like, it's not something that you can sell. I sell sewing patterns online. That's cool. And even there, I've met lots of people who, oh, I'm in Spain. I want to meet you in person. We've had plenty of that. Mm-hmm. But you can sell a sewing pattern without, meeting. But you can't work with somebody in a coaching relationship without feeling comfortable with one another and to feel like there is this connection. And when I discovered that it's actually there's a lot less hustle required. And I always think back of what Rich Litvin says. He says, my business plan is go out and meet fun and interesting people. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love connecting with people. And it's this, I've seen it work like that in the IT industry. I've seen it in the sewing business, and it's exactly the same in the coaching business. At the end of the day, it's always like, oh, I've got whatever, I need help with whatever. Who do I know? And it's the most fun way to go about it, and I think the most effective.
I love that. I have a coaching question for you, because I coach people too, but I realized last year, it was really interesting. I all of a sudden noticed that the coaching students I was attracting and the things I was teaching them and talking to them about over and over again were the exact same things that I needed to do in my business, which I thought was very fascinating and very interesting. So I wonder, do you find that too, that you attract clients that show you things about your life that you want to learn and work on and develop as well? Or is that just me?
I think everybody, I think that's how it always works. Like in any way, it's almost as if we're magnetically attracted to the people and the circumstances that teach us the lessons that we need to learn. Yeah, for sure. It's always evolving. Yeah, but I think it's.
I just wondered, because I'm like, don't normally notice those things, but I'm like, I found myself teaching over and over again the same couple of technical things. And then I'm like, oh, because I'm not doing that in my business. That's why I'm having to teach you. And then the light bulb goes off. And I'm like, and then I put it in my business. And now I'm not attracting any customers or any clients that need help with that, because I put it in my business. It's in place. So now I can move on to the next thing, which I find fascinating. But I guess that's.
I find that's true. That's so true. It's like the thing that comes up for me is consistency. Mm-hmm. Like to consistently. I'm super consistent when I see the purpose of it. Mm-hmm. I've always even been the purposeful creator. I've never made, like, I'm interested in sewing. I love sewing because it's creative, but I can actually wear it in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not making pillowcases because what's the point, you know? And when I learned to program, it was like I would have the learning project had to be something that I actually wanted to use. Otherwise, I'm not interested. And so I noticed that I sometimes struggle with consistency in the moment when I'm thinking, actually, when I start doubting whether I'm heading in the right direction, that's when I'm like, and then I'm prone to, well, okay, I can't get myself to produce more stuff when I kind of don't see, and I'm not certain that, like, I want to go in that direction to try out this or to do whatever. And I'll be the first one to say to clients, well, you can't, and sometimes they're cute when they're first starting out and it goes, oh no, this isn't working. So what have you done? Well, I've put flyers everywhere. Okay, what else? And how, or no, this website thing isn't working. And like, okay, how long or what, you know, well, it's been live for 2 weeks. you know, like literally, like that isn't even made up.
I know, that's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, so what did you expect this website to do for you? You know, in what time frame? Like, yeah, of course, people aren't, like, you know how many websites there are on the internet? You know, like your clients aren't magically kind of going to fly and land on this website, you know? And so I'm the first one to tell them, no, yeah, like you have to consistently take steps to create yourself an audience. And I'm like, okay, you better listen to your own stuff, you know? So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I had to learn that lesson about focus, focusing on one thing. I had so many lessons like that last year. It was just funny, but that's the way it works. I think that's awesome.
It's the fun part.
It is the fun part. Well, I want to respect your time. So what I would like to do is ask you, do you have one piece of advice that you would like to give the ladies on the call today and the women business owners with respect to handling customers and moving forward with their businesses that they can take with them and think about and really, you know, ponder for the future and help to grow their businesses? And I think it's probably going to be something about personal development or paying attention to themselves. But what would you say to them today? This is a thing. If you would just do this, because taking action is really important. I laughed because so many people will study and learn, but never take any action. They won't. Whereas you move to a whole new country, which I think is absolutely fabulous. I mean, I think that's so wonderful. And I've got a friend right now who's going to pilot school. He's, I think, 40 something, and he's wanted to be a pilot since he was 7. So he's actually in Spain training right now to become a commercial pilot. And he dropped everything he was doing in the online world, where he was very successful, and just got into pilot school and is the oldest pilot there. But it's fun to watch his journey because he's documenting his journey online, so we can watch and root him on and cheer for him as he goes through all his exams and things. But it's very rare that someone will up and take an action like that. It's the same when we start our businesses. It's a big jump. It's a big risk for most of us to start our businesses or to leave our corporate jobs or just to leave any job or to, you know, leave our relationships or whatever. So do you have any advice for us to, maybe not to get us to do that, but to build relationships with our customers or anything to do with customers that we could take with us going forward?
Well, the first thing that jumps to mind is what we've talked about before, like it's never personal, like never ever forget that. I think that probably would have to be the most powerful one, or the thing that has the most impact. And another thing that just popped to mind when you were talking is that idea of what is actually at stake. Because people have asked so many times, like, how can you be so crazy and just quit your job and move to Spain? And it wasn't from one day to the next. I am not that crazy. Mm-hmm. But so I did, you know, did do it in a sensible way, I felt. But when I was always kind of a bit taken aback when people say, oh, that's so brave. And how, you know, how would you, and I'm like, I don't know. I grew up in East Germany. When you tried to get out of there, you got shot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or you kind of could take the long route. That's, you know, that's what I did. And then you'd be let out at some point, but you knew you would never be allowed back. And whoever you leave behind, you'll never in your life see again. You know, compared to that, moving to Spain and see whether I could pull this business thing off. So what, like, literally for me, it was like, what's the big deal? What's at stake? The worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't work out as I think it will, or maybe I don't like. Maybe it does work out the way I think, but I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take my bag and go somewhere else. You know, and I always felt like, not a big deal. So when somebody is doubting of like moving forward and it feels like you're on a tightrope and you're really careful about that next step, I would say, well, are you really on a tightrope? Or is it a white line drawn on the ground?
Oh, I love that. What a change in perspective, and what a good way to describe a change in perspective, because that's all it is a way of looking at it differently. That was wonderful.
So most of the time there isn't half as much at stake as we think.
Yeah, I like to take a piece of paper whenever I'm having a time like that where I feel like something is so scary, and I just write down, well, what's the worst case scenario? What is the absolute worst thing that can happen? And pretty much it's never going to kill me. It's usually, like you said, something I've just made up in my mind based on something totally irrational that might have happened when I was 7. And it's just like, okay, that doesn't make any sense.
No. And it ignores the fact that even if it does happen, you'll be able to deal with it.
Absolutely. Because we're resilient. We're women. We're totally resilient.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I so enjoyed our talk today. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks so much for having me. It was so much fun.
We'll have more women's summits, and I hope you'll join us on them as well.
I'm more than happy. I really love it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You have a terrific day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.